everyone, this is Rochelle from Adventures Around Asia, and today we're going to do a quick guide to learning Mandarin Chinese. So for this lesson, I've listed a few words that you need to know if you are visiting China and you don't speak any Chinese. Now I've included the pronunciation below each word or phrase, but Chinese can be pretty tricky because not only is the pronunciation really difficult, but there's also tones. So I figured the best way to help everyone out would be to record myself saying all of these words with the tones, teaching you how to do the pronunciation to make sure that you know how to say these words when you get to China. And the sad thing is about tones is if you don't use the correct tones, people will not understand what you're talking about. I mean, just when I first arrived in China, I was looking for some green tea at the grocery store, and I asked someone where the liu cha was. Now I thought cha was a word for tea, and it is, but it's not cha, it's cha. So I was at the grocery store asking people where the liu cha was, and people were like, what is she talking about? And I was like, like tea, like you drink it, like pantomiming in Chinese, like I was like, green tea, you drink it, and everyone's just like, no. And finally, I didn't have like a working smartphone, so I couldn't just look it up. So I was like, liu cha, liu cha, liu cha, and they were like, oh, green tea, why didn't you say so? I'm like, I'm in a grocery store. I'm saying a word that sounds extremely, it is the same word. It's just a different tone. So for a non-tonal speaker, I'm like, really? I mean, it's not, it's the same word. It's just pronounced like slightly differently. Like you can't just like figure it out from context. But for Chinese people, tones are really important. So that becomes very difficult for people trying to learn Chinese because not only do you have to learn how to pronounce all these words, you have to do the right tones too. So for this video, I'm going to show you how to pronounce these words, but then also how to pronounce them with the tones so that you kind of have a basis, you can practice a few times, and you should be able to have it down by the time you get to China. So here we go. So the first one that we have is ni hao, which means hello. So basically, most people in China know the word hello, and sometimes Chinese people will actually scream hello at you as you walk by. Like you may see like a 50-year-old man scream hello when he sees you, especially if you look foreign. I always like to respond with ni hao. People tend to be shocked and say, oh my gosh, your Chinese is so good. And I'm like, I just said hello, like, okay. But I think that mainly comes from using the tones correctly. If you use the tones right, people will really appreciate it and be really impressed. Ni hao is 2/3 tones. So it's ni hao, ni hao. So that's the first one, first need to know word, hello. And then the second one is thank you, 谢谢. So thank you can be pretty difficult to pronounce for most people. And I've had a lot of difficulties trying to teach my friends and my parents how to say it. So basically, the X makes an SH sound. Sh, xie, xie. So the I makes an E sound, and the E makes an sound, like ugh, xie, 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 xie. And then we've got 2/3 tones, xie, xie. Next one I have on here is 多少钱, which basically means how much money does it cost. So 多少 means how much, and 钱 means money. So first one we have is 多. Think of it as saying do and o combined together. 多. And the reason it sounds so weird, like 多, is because it's first tone. So first tone is a sort of flat, high tone. 多. So you can see I'm kind of speaking down here at this level, but when I say 多, I hop up a little bit. So if you're a guy and your voice is like this, you don't have to be like 多. You can do it just a little bit above your natural octave. So 多, you want to do kind of like a monotone, higher pitched. 多少, the SH sound, sh and ow, 少. Now, shao is that kind of elusive fifth tone or no tone. So basically, you just kind of pronounce shao quickly. 多少, so the emphasis is on the 多少, and then 钱. So the Q kind of makes a CH sound. Ch, 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 yen. Qian. The qian is second tone, so it's qian, which sort of sounds like a question, like what? We use this second tone not to signify a question like we would in English, but actually because the word is second tone, qian. So 多少钱? How much money does it cost? The next one kind of has to do with money matters too. It's 买单, which means bill or check. You don't need to say anything else. I mean, even Chinese people just go 买单. So this one's pretty easy. It's 买, right? Like my pen, and dan, which kind of sounds like D-O-N, but it's really D-A-N. So 买单, 买单. So third tone and first tone. The next one is 宾馆, which means hotel. So this is always a good one to know. I mean, I would personally recommend taking a card from the hotel so you have the name in Chinese characters and a phone number just in case your cab driver can't find it. You know, you can just give this card to your cab driver and they can just take you straight to your hotel. But if you need to know the word for hotel, it's 宾馆, like where have you been? And then 馆, so gu on, like goo, like slimy, and then on. 宾馆. And the next one I have is 啤酒, which is beer. So basically, 酒 means alcohol. So the way that you can pronounce this is, it's not like Joe, like, hey Joe. I would say it's more like G and O, like gee whiz, and O, Joe. So you say G-O, Joe. So that's alcohol. So then we have a few different types of alcohol. We have 啤酒, hongjiu, and baijiu. So 啤酒 is beer. You say pea like eating a pea. 啤酒. And then we have hongjiu, so H-O-N-G, hongjiu. That's red wine. It literally means red alcohol. And there actually is no word for white wine because Chinese people don't really drink white wine. Baijiu is white alcohol. Hongjiu is red alcohol. But baijiu is actually a really strong liquor, which I think tastes horrible, and you can't mix it with anything, and I wouldn't really recommend drinking it, but if you want to try it, go ahead. The last one I have is all the meats you would ever need to know when visiting China. So this is most important when you're reading a menu, but another time you might need to know this is if you are asking someone what something is. You can point to something and be like, 猪肉, like, is that pork? Especially if you have some sort of dietary restriction, if you can't eat pork or, you know, you don't eat red meat, something like that. The first one is 猪肉, 猪肉, and so that is pork. So I would pronounce it as Jew, like a Jewish person, and row, like to row a boat. 猪肉. So remember that's first tone and fourth tone. 猪肉, 猪肉. The next one is 鸡肉, which is chicken. So that is G like oh gee, and row like rowing a boat. That is also a first tone, fourth tone. So 鸡肉, 鸡肉, 猪肉, 猪肉. The next one is 牛肉. So it's 牛肉, second tone, fourth tone. 牛 is kind of pronounced like ni and o, like oh, hit my knee. 牛, 牛肉. So 牛肉, 牛肉. And that is beef. And the last one that you need to know is 羊肉. 羊肉, which is lamb or mutton. And this can either be sheep or lamb because in Chinese it's the same word. These are kind of the main phrases that you need to know when visiting China. But luckily there's a few other words that I've included that make your life a little bit easier. And these are words in English that you can use in China, no problem. The few words that I've included below are taxi. A lot of people know that one in English. Just make sure if someone's screaming taxi, taxi, taxi at you in the airport, make sure you go to the actual queue for the taxi and don't get in a random unmarked car. because you will get ripped off. The next one is WC. I didn't realize that Chinese people used this, but a lot of my students would say, "Oh, Miss Rochelle, can I go to WC?" And I'm like, "What is that?" They're like, "Oh, bathroom. Okay." So there are Chinese words for bathroom. There's 厕所, it's really hard to pronounce, and that's toilet. And then 卫生间 is restroom. But a lot of the signs also have WC printed on them, so a lot of Chinese people know if you're like, WC, and they're like, they should know, but if they're like, then just like mime having to go to the bathroom. It should be fine. And the last one is bye-bye, which Chinese people love to use more so than 再见, which is actually goodbye. Whenever you're leaving, shop or restaurant, you can just be like, bye-bye, and they'll probably say that to you too. And know that it's not them catering to you because you speak English. It's like actually how they say goodbye. So hopefully this post was helpful for you, and if you have any questions, make sure to write them in the comments section below this post. I can definitely try to answer them the best that I can. I really hope that, if you were a little nervous about going to China because you don't speak Chinese, just know that I have a lot of friends that I've met in China who showed up speaking no Chinese. And I've been to some really remote locations in China, and I've met backpackers who speak like 1 or 2 words. And I see them and I'm like, how did you get here? I took a 7-hour public bus here. Like, how did you get here? And they're like, yeah, I just like took the bus, my hostel like wrote the name of the place down and I just showed it to them. So sometimes for me it's hard to know how people who don't speak Chinese get around in China because I do speak Chinese. But really, it's not as hard as people make it out to be. I mean, a lot of people do speak English, especially anyone who looks like they're in college or like a young business person in Beijing or Shanghai. Chances are they can probably help you out. Everyone in China has to learn English starting in 1st or 3rd grade all the way through college. So, I mean, it really depends on the area that you're in because, if you're kind of in the middle of nowhere, chances are people don't really speak good English. But, I mean, Chinese people learn English in school. The main thing is that they don't know how to speak it per se because they never got a chance to practice. There's 50 students to a classroom, and everything they learn is based off this Gaokao test that they need to take to get into college. And I talked a lot about this in my past posts about what it's like teaching Chinese students who are studying for this test, and spoken English is not important, and it makes them feel nervous, and they barely ever get to practice it, and when they do, it's normally something that they've memorized. So a lot of times people are just really nervous to speak English. But, my students, they all speak English. I told them my goal for you at the beginning of the year is that if you see a foreigner who's lost in China, you can go up to them and say, hey, can I help you? It doesn't matter if your English is perfect. Just put yourself out there. With these phrases that I've given you, you should be able to get around. And I'm going to write another post about ways to get around in China without speaking Chinese, how to get a cab, tips and tricks like, taking the hotel card, things like that. It's definitely possible to visit China as a non-Chinese speaker. And I really hope that these phrases help you on your trip. And if you have any questions, let me know below. Okay, bye.